Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.
I'll buy that for $1.
You know, when I was in college, I had a film studies class, and I think it was just like, looking back at it, I think it was just like whatever the teacher wanted or the professor wanted us to watch. Whatever the professor wanted to watch. It was like RoboCop, Die Hard, and the one where they go to Mars. What's
Mars Attack?
no, not Mars. Total Recall.
Oh.
Total Recall. You watch that.
Incredible.
Incredible stuff. Yeah. Okay. Let's get started. Yeah, Total Recall. Cool. So maybe do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Alejandro. I'm one of the co-directors for Lucy Parsons Labs.
Get you in frame. We gotta get you.
You're right. Yeah, you have to get my good side.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is me without makeup on today. So this is what you'll have to deal with.
And I'm Freddie. I'm the other co-director of LPL. We're just hanging out just a little bit, and we're gonna get started in 1 second. We're just placing a dinner order. But I guess before we let's do that. Yeah, that looks good.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for joining the chat and the live stream. And yeah, I see people interacting in the chat. That's what's up. So I think we just wanted to do like a little surveillance 101 ahead of the DNC, talk about what's happening here in Chicago, talk about what's happening across the country, and really just give folks a sense of what the Chicago landscape looks like before people come to town. Yeah, this is the right place. Sorry, I don't know. I should maybe change the RoboCop background so that we Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Yeah.
And let's see, maybe we can drag the. Maybe we can drag the canvas a little bit. Oh, I'll mess with that in a second. Yeah, so I figured we'd start with just a little bit of an overview of like what's happening with Chicago Police Surveillance's Dragnet. And that way, you know, to help better empower people as they come into town. And there we go. No, that's not what I want. You know, knowledge is power. So that's kind of what we thought we'd do today. And please, yeah, please don't. Yeah, there's like spam and stuff. Block and report. What do you call it? Report. Yeah. My colleague Alejandro will be moderating some of the chat messages and reading some stuff for us. And yeah, I think maybe before we get started, I'll just talk a little bit about who LPL is and what we do. And we'll talk a little bit about Chicago, the DNC, and then we'll go from there. So LPL is the two of us. Say hi, Alejandro.
Hello.
Not just the two of us. We're a collection of two staffers and a bunch of volunteers and folks who have been researching surveillance for over almost getting to close to a decade here.
Since at least 2016.
Since 2016. So really understanding what the surveillance infrastructure look like, documenting who are the players, and things like that. So we've been doing this work for a long time here in Chicago, and then helping people sort of understand, like, okay, what are the risks, what are the threats, and things like that. I think it's also kind of important for us to talk about, like, you know, the political moment that we find ourselves in, which is not too dissimilar from the one that happened in 1968, the last time Chicago hosted the DNC. You find ourselves in a situation where we have wildly unpopular wars that the public is against, two political parties who don't find either don't seem to care or um, are not receptive to challenges to that power, and see any kind of anti-war, um, anti-imperialist mobilization as a threat to national security. So you'll see that a lot of the funding for DNC stuff comes from Department of Homeland Security, anti-genocide. Yeah, exactly, anti-genocide. You'll see a lot of the funding that comes through the Department of Justice comes with national security considerations, and that's really how it's treated. And I also think it's important to talk about the history of. There's a very long history, but probably most relevant from since the 90s of treating any kind of pro-Palestinian activism under the threat of equating basically pro-Palestinian activism with terrorism. You see this in the emergence of, like, for example, the effective death penalty terrorism enhancement laws, right? So after neo-Nazi blew up the federal building in Kentucky, right, when Timothy McVeigh blew up a federal building, we saw groups like the ADL push for the first creation of the terrorism laws. And what happened in that instance is that instead of sort of looking at internal threats by groups like neo-Nazis, the equation was that we need to treat pro-Palestinian activists as terrorists. So, the creation of terrorism laws. Sorry, one second. We have to hit. Sorry. So the creation of, like, the terrorism laws in the 90s, the first time, created the designation of foreign terrorist organizations, and the majority of those were Palestinian groups, right? And of course, this has nothing to do with neo-Nazi groups planting bombs in federal buildings, which at the time was and still is the largest domestic terrorist killing of all time. And then you see expansions of this throughout different time periods. I mean, there are famous examples in the 2000s with groups that were raising money for Palestinian refugees and Palestinian relief, and were effectively criminalized and charged under terrorism statutes. So anyway, that's all to say that the entire history of pro-Palestinian activism has always been treated as essentially a way of. They've always used anti-terrorism laws as a way of criminalizing protests and trying to divide groups and acting in solidarity with Palestinians under this lens. So it's important to think like that this context of, like, where's the money coming from for Chicago police? It's not coming, outside of that history. And in fact, it's really just an extension of this kind of very imperialist, very anti-Palestinian, pro-Zionist, pro-terror framework, which we've seen in this country for decades. Let me talk about 1 second. 1 second, chat. Muted. Whoops. Thank you, chat. None of us can hear. Is that better? I think it should be. I think it's in Jacob. I think it was here. No, I'll find the link. Haven't heard voice since. Is that any better, anyone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
it looks
Okay.
like it.
Yeah. Sorry. So what I was saying is that at least $75 million, $80 million has been allocated in this kind of thank you. Thanks everyone. Thanks chat.
Yeah.
Has been allocated to Chicago for police spending. The majority of that has been in primarily two buckets, right? The first bucket is let me the first bucket is police spending, overtime, and things like that. So salaries, overtime, things like that. And then another approximately 25 million is being allocated for equipment. And so we've seen things like riot shields, pepper spray, tear gas, and all of that sort of stuff being purchased, and things like those like concrete cement infrastructure bollards, I guess they're called, where you put them and so you can't drive a car on the sidewalk. That, like, you see that like around United Center and things like that, stuff like that. So we're seeing like a massive amount of police spending around like equipment, tear gas, that sort of stuff, and then also just millions and millions of dollars on police spending. And I think this should trouble people, because the idea that you're just going to have thousands of cops walking around doing nothing without any kind, like, kind of boggles the mind, because there has to be some justification for this police spending. One thing that I've noticed a lot with protests and protest related activity is that it's always like right as marches are breaking up, or as as nightfall is coming, that police will tend to like charge crowds, will tend to arrest people at random, and so this idea that we're just going to have the thousands of cops on the ground with millions of dollars floating to pay them overtime, like they're going to do something. And so there's this huge sort of, I don't know, I guess my expectation and my fear is that that's what's going to happen. I'll pause there, and then we'll sort of switch gears into some of the stuff that we know about CPD itself. Ali, is there anything you want to say? You want to add?
No, I think that's great. I think we can jump into some of the technologies that we know are deployed.
Just that it's
Excellent.
yeah, cool. So we have this sorry, let me pause there. And any questions from YouTube?
No, we don't have any questions yet at the moment. If you feel like you have any questions, just feel free to throw them in the chat.
Yeah.
I'm keeping a log of them.
Yeah, or send us an @ on social media. Ale is checking as well. Cool. So we have a website. It's just chicagopolicesurveillance.com. Here, I'll just post it in the chat again, or post it in the chat. And we've spent maybe the last 8 years trying to keep an updated list of all of the tactics that we know CPD uses, and we'll go into a few of them. The one that I really kind of want to start off with is like the social media monitoring section. And did anyone see what this? Oh, that's a great question. Before we start talking about social media monitoring, did anyone want to see what the 75 million was for? Actually, yes. And let me pull it up actually first. Actually, let's parking lot that question so that we can we'll get back to it. It's this one. Okay. Yes, we have that file. So social media monitoring, and it's probably, if I were to like say one thing that I want people to walk away from, is just that, like, we know feds are monitoring social media. We know that police are monitoring social media, and they can and will do a lot of techniques to triangulate, like, to see what people are saying. So, you know, I've seen firsthand what that looks like. Like I've one time I was picked up at during a protest, and like we're being processed. There's like 50 of us or something, and like I can see like the police are literally on Twitter just like hitting refresh over and over and over again, and they have like lists just like everyone else has on lists on social media, and they're just like looking through a bunch of people's pages to see what they're saying and doing. But that's not the extent of it too. They also buy software that will like place basically like, you know, like a map around a particular location. So if you want to monitor all the tweets, like how do I describe it? Like Snapchat has a map. I think we can just do this quickly, right? Snapchat map, maybe. Snap map, right? I think Snapchat, is that the one? Is it Snap map?
Mhm.
I can't see. But Snapchat like will let you see like who's sending Snapchats right around your particular location, right? So that's like the basic kind of like what they're doing, but it's actually way more unfiltered than that. So what they can do is they can like say like, okay, for this given 3 or 4 block area, I want to see all the tweets that are being posted, all the Facebook posts that are being posted, all the Snapchat that are being posted, and then so like this all gets filtered in real time, and then like so they can see who's saying what. And then that's kind of like the software that they use, and there's different types of software that they use, but that's not the only thing that they do. They also monitor like individuals. Like I've heard stories of CPD officers who like are in schools, and they'll have like an interaction with a kid or with a child, and then they'll just like pull up their Facebook page and see what they're saying on Facebook, and then they'll like look through their friends' Facebook pages and stuff like that. So like while there is like this sort of very kind of like automated way of doing it, there's also like very ad hoc way of they just pull up whoever they want to monitor.
Did you drop something?
Yeah, I dropped. The other thing too is that like we know for a fact that like this social media monitoring is being done on keywords. So like we've seen like police departments that will like literally put the words like protest in a, you got to get in the frame if you're gonna nod. Yeah, if you're gonna nod, you gotta be in frame. They'll put things like the word protest and like First Amendment activity into lists, right? So they'll monitor based on keywords, So they're like monitoring based on locations and keywords, individuals, and then they also will take like basically like relationships. So like, oh, I know you're friends with this person on Facebook, and they'll try to create basically like maps of like friend groups and associations and things like that. So there's like these like both automated and automated and manual ways of trying to determine associations. And then like I guess one thing I also want to say about social media is that what happens is that like there's a lot of like flattening of context or the ways things are expressed that happen on social media that I think really highlight like why it's a really imperfect way of looking at the world. In one investigation that we did, we noticed that like CPD was thank you, Ale. Like looking through the like so if someone was injured, someone was hurt or killed, the police were monitoring their family members' social media accounts, right? So like let's say my cousin was injured, the human and rational thing to do might be to go vent and blow off steam, and people do this on social media, and that's not like any intent of criminality of any kind, and it's not evidence of anything, but the police would use that as justification for opening up investigations into people who themselves have been like hurt in some way. And so that's all to say that like I think it's important to be mindful of the kinds of things that we post on social media, not because we should be like self-censoring, but because the context gets removed, right? There are a lot of things that are quite legal and within your rights to say, that but let's put it this way, like leaving your jokes about like maybe leave your jokes about Minecraft servers on the Minecraft servers, like if that's the way you can express it, right? Like so being mindful that the police are monitoring social media is really important. The other thing I should say about social media is that it is a very it is a place where we're seeing a lot of like Zionist and like organize a lot of Zionists organizing to punish pro-Palestinian activism. So we see a lot of like tweets that people will post or whatever it is, and then you'll see like Zionists use that to try to get people fired, or we'll try to find out where they work and open up harassment campaigns. So we're seeing a lot of like punishment for what people are saying and doing on social media. And so you have to be quite mindful of it, of what's being posted and what, because we do see a lot of people just kind of like take the lowest like hanging fruit and then just try to build harassment campaigns around what people are posting on social media. So we are seeing like a huge, I won't say like a shift, but we are seeing like that is a place where we're hearing a lot of people who are saying, I'm being targeted with threats. I'm being my comment was taken out of context or edited selectively, and so we get a lot of that kind of feedback. So just be mindful that it's not just the police who are like looking for things on social media, but there's a lot of people keeping logs. Anything else you want to add about social media?
No, I think that's sufficient. I just posted, this is a little bit moving away from social media, but someone had asked about the 75 million sent to the city. So I posted a link to an email that we got.
Yeah, maybe, why don't we pull that up? Right.
Right.
So this is a document that we obtained about where's that 75 million that CPD is getting. The city has like been refusing to release these numbers, but you know, we got numbers. There's that 25 million that I talked about for police overtime. Can folks read this? Maybe I make it slightly. Yeah. Another 10 million for police salaries, 5 million for training, 25 million on equipment, another 5 million for other law enforcement missions, contracts with outside agencies, that's another 5 million, and then facility hardening. I will say that a couple of things here. This is just the money that's coming into the city, CPD and the city. There's also money that's going into other outside agencies like Secret Service, DHS. When they call these things like national security events, which is like what they call DNC, RNC, the Super Bowl, the Olympics, whatever. They send a ton of like feds and outside agencies, DEA, ISP, Illinois State Police, Cook County. So like this is just CPD, and then you know there will be a bunch of other people involved, right? So like this 5 million for 911 or streets and sanitation or whatever. That's not inclusive of all the other feds and the spending that's going on outside of this. So
Right.
take a look at that image and feel free to ask questions about it. One second. Let's switch up to maybe the camera network would be good to talk about.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. The other thing I wanted to facility search means what? Facility, that's a great question. Facility search means like putting that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. It means like the fencing that they're going to put up around the United Center and the you know, all that extra stuff like that. So they're going to buy like concrete barriers, for example, that they're going to put around McCormick Center, right? And then when they shut down parts of the street, so that like they've already announced that they're going to shut down
Starting on the 16th.
starting on the 16th. Yeah, they're going to shut down particular streets and stuff like that. So that's kind of what that facility surge is going to mean, right? That's what that refers to. It's a great question. I wanted to talk about the camera network a little bit, and then I also want to talk about facial recognition after that. Video surveillance. Yeah, here we go. Let's start with this map. So, Chicago has one of the most extensive camera networks in the world. I think it's second or third only to like let's move our dino friend here. Second only to like places like in China. London has a much larger one, and this is one that has been built over the last 20 years called Operation Virtual Shield. Most people in Chicago are familiar with like the blue light cameras that you see around parks and in other locations that are quite visible. That was built out of Operation Virtual Shield. So the money for Operation Virtual Shield comes through CPD, it comes through the mayor's office, and then also it comes through the alders in each like ward here can decide like I want a camera here, I want a camera there, and they can ask to get cameras installed. So we have about Chicago has about 35,000 of these all over the country, all over the city. And here's a kind of incomplete map. People always ask us, like, do you have the most up to date map? And I couldn't tell you where we got the original data from. It's been so many years. But, 35,000 cameras. This number's probably only increased since then. And those are just the public ones. Those are the blue light cameras that you see. Then what the city has is the private cameras. And when I mean the private cameras, I don't mean like the Ring cameras and that sort of stuff, which also are not reflected in this map. But what they have is like basically programs where if you are a business, let's say a bank, if you buy particular camera models, you can ask the city to enroll your private camera into this Operation Virtual Shield, and then what they take is basically they can access your footage, and that program is basically like hidden entirely from the public. We've heard estimates that CPD has stated that those cameras are about 70,000. So 35,000 from the city's own cameras that we know of, double that for private cameras, and then like add all of the Ring networks and Ring cameras and all of that crap as well. So you can imagine that there's a pretty massive camera network. The cameras have obviously different capabilities depending on how long they've been out. Now you have even like the cameras that like people put on their houses have like infrared light. They have motion capture. They have body detection.
They're in pretty high resolution.
Yeah, pretty 4K.
Yeah,
even.
exactly.
But the city cameras aren't all like that. They do have, most of them have handheld zoom, PTZ they're called, and so they can rotate 360 and they can like zoom in and out. They record 24/7. Those recordings are kept for I think 60 days, and then are deleted. And then and for the most part, they're somewhat modern, I guess you could call it. But there are a ton of them that are still like super grainy and whatnot. So I expect that that's going to change obviously over time, but that's kind of what the capabilities are. Yeah. So that's kind of the video surveillance network. Another common thing to know. Oh, sorry. One more thing to point out about the camera system is that Operation Virtual Shield also doesn't include what the CTA does with its own camera network. So we've seen documents where CPD, for example, wanted real-time access to the CTA's camera network under anti-terrorism funding, and they claim that they don't have access to this, but we've seen that as well. So there's also the CTA's camera network. There's also the housing authorities public camera network, and so there's a ton of them everywhere. So just be aware of that. Biological sensors. I don't understand the question about biological sensors. If you want to say more, I'd be happy to.
I think it's within operation.
I don't know. Biological sensors. I assume that means like what? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
That's like a research question for us to do.
Yeah, something to dive into. Has anyone mapped the cameras around the march routes for DNC? I'm not aware. Do you have any idea?
I don't think so, but
Yeah.
they're everywhere. So like you should assume that whatever you do is being
Yeah.
videotaped.
I would assume the route. is
Yeah.
almost entirely.
I will also say one thing about the camera network and kind of one the cameras on anyone who has had their bike stolen in Chicago knows that like these camera networks are not, or their packages stolen or whatever it is. These cameras networks do not solve crime, they do not prevent crime, and we see a lot of like, and anyway, that's just to say like just because there are cameras all along the march and whatnot, there is also like part of the reason they have these things deployed is just to remind people like we're watching you, blah blah blah. And so there's the whole one of the one of the effects is just to like sort of scare people out of activism. Anyway, so that's the camera network. Anything else we want to say about the camera network?
Yeah, I think we can jump
Yeah,
into.
I do want to talk about facial recognition
Yeah, I
technology
think that's
because we
a good-
get a lot of questions about facial
Yeah,
recognition.
I think we can also talk about the difference between like automatic versus like
maybe
manual recognition.
yeah. Okay. So let me do this. Maybe I should do this. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great.
So CPD has access to and uses a massive facial recognition database. So what happens in this country is that if you've ever gotten like a DMV photo, your face is probably in a facial recognition database somewhere. It's estimated that at least half of all Americans are in at least one facial recognition database, if not multiple.
Mhm.
And we know that because like what happens is that there are basically like agreements between like the FBI and like DMVs to basically be like give me your DMV photos. And so DMV photos are a very popular place for police to gain access to basically like facial recognition photos. Another popular place for them to gain access is mugshot data. And mugshot data is like basically like kind of like completely unregulated in any way. So like we do know that like police departments will, for example, sometimes share mugshot data with each other in secret. And so there is like this process where like if you think someone so there's mugshot data, and then there's also like social media data. So there are companies that will collect every photo that they can off the internet and then try to say like, oh, this person on LinkedIn is the same person on this Instagram post. And then so what they'll do is they'll like sell that access to police, and the police will send the company a photo, and the company will say, I on this Instagram page or on that LinkedIn profile, this person looks like that mugshot or that pro photo you sent me, I should say, that photo you sent us. So you know, facial recognition is like a place where we see a lot of police departments gaining a lot of data, and then we are seeing that like facial recognition, like I mean you all saw after COVID hit that like Apple was like, we can detect you with a mask on now, isn't that great? So we're seeing a lot of money being spent allow yeah we see a lot of money being spent by facial recognition vendors so that they can detect who a person is, even if they're wearing sunglasses, even if they're wearing masks, even if their hair's covered. So we do see like a big influx of facial recognition being used and done all over the place. The way it works in Chicago specifically is that um, CPD has essentially like what they do is they use mugshot data, and then they have custom written like software that takes like Cook County Jail's mugshot data and then takes CPD's data and combines the two. They also have specific units at CPD that do facial comparison and stuff like that. They're staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that's basically all they do is they look on social media, they look on Facebook, they look through their photos, looking at faces and stuff like that. They call themselves like facial recognition experts or something like that. But it's not like a science that you can get an expertise in. It's just that's what they do all day. Someone asked a really good question about if CPD has ever taken photos of people and put them on like, social media for and actually that was happening quite a bit in 2020. We were seeing photos of like CPD would take photos of people and like throw them online, and then there was them being like, do you know this person, blah blah blah, and there was this huge sort of outcry of them sort of using this as a technique for collective punishment, just to be like to kill people's free speech. They deleted the photos off of Twitter and then denied that they did it, that they deleted the photos. So yeah, I sent the FOIA to try to figure out who deleted it or how or why, and they said we have no records about that. Yeah. So that's kind of like how biometrics works in Chicago. There are also like more advanced like levels of biometrics. So we've seen, for example, I've seen in specific cases where the FBI and the Illinois State Police claims that they could detect how someone was walking, like
it's using gait recognition.
Yeah, gait recognition, and say like this person is that tall, and I think it's this person. And they were and they've been able to pick people up off of stuff like that. So
I think it's also worthwhile to say that when you look at the technology alone, there's like variable efficacy, especially for facial recognition, for example. It works pretty poorly for folks in the Black community, especially Black women. And as a result of these sorts of things, you get a lot of false positives and accusations come up, which is, I think, another layer of the kind of just like horrible consequences of having this kind of technology out there, because it's incorrectly framed as being objective. It's used to justify a lot of stops and a lot of harm, and at the same time, it's also just accelerating or amplifying existing racial tensions. I don't know what that looks like for gait recognition. We see it all the time for facial recognition. And of course, we're not advocating for this to get better. I would actually prefer, right?
Yeah, we just need to ban this technology.
Exactly. Yeah.
Another common question too that we get asked a lot is like, because this technology is getting more powerful every day, is like, can people get detected using when they're have their face covered or have masks on or whatever? My preference is that when I go to protests is I always just wear my sunnies and my sunscreen and a mask. Do what you
Everyone needs to wear one of these. I think that's my advice.
We need one of those. Yeah. Yeah. We'll put...
It's perfect operational security. You know?
This isn't a sponsored stream, but if it were,
yes, and platform stiletto. Great
Stiletto. How much is CPD collaborating with suburban police departments? This is a great question. For the most part, it's not that it doesn't happen. Like Cook County Police and CPD do obviously talk to each other a lot and work with each other a lot. From what I've seen, and that's just what we have evidence of, that's not to say that it's proof of anything one way or the other, is that for the most part, CPD claims that other police departments don't have access to its facial recognition database. And I don't actually have any evidence that that's not true. We do know that like other databases that CPD or Cook County and ISP and a bunch of other people have access to. So we do see a lot of like collaboration of other types of data, but usually not like facial recognition. Talk about comparison. Okay, so the question is, you talk a lot about comparisons to mugshot data. Does it imply that the surveillance technique is more effective for people who are already in the system? So we've seen it like both ways. Like, okay, I think with mugshot data, well, okay, let's put it this way. One problem I have with facial recognition, I have a lot of problems with facial recognition, but the first one is that like the way we talk about digital policing is not the same way that we would talk about sort of physical policing. If I were to steal a purse at Lollapalooza, the police either couldn't or wouldn't try to stop and search 40,000 people to try to recover my purse, because it's just like not possible, and because it's like, yeah, it's prohibitive, right? And also like 40,000 people are not going to go for getting searched because of one person like their pockets picked. But what we see like analogs to this in the electronic context all the time. So like the idea that because I have a mugshot, or sorry, I have a driver's license, that my face should be used to search for crime, it just like really bothers me, right? Because like I have nothing to do with that. There's no suspicion that one of the 4 million people in Illinois has anything to do with that face. And so that is like a super common problem. Like that's just a big problem that I have. The other problem is that obviously like these data sets are introducing their own bias, right? So like people who have been arrested are more likely to have their mugshots in searched against for facial recognition. We've seen it both ways, where people who were like arrested basically because like the algorithms alerted the police to like, I think this person is that person, and then the police just go and arrest them without doing any kind of investigation. I actually haven't seen the other counterexample where they're like less likely to, like, I haven't seen them rearrest someone whose mugshot was in like databases. We've actually just seen it more like yeah, the example that we see a lot is just the police would just arrest anyone just because the computer told them to.
I also think approaching the question maybe a little differently. I don't know if having your face within a mugshot database necessarily makes the facial recognition model or algorithm any more efficacious or accurate at giving a match, but it does sort of change your threat model a bit, because you'll be in a pool that's of faces that's being searched. So I think if you have some sort of awareness that your face exists in a database, perhaps a mugshot database, it's probably practical and pragmatic to make sure that you're covering up your face if you're engaging in any action.
Yeah. one more thing I want to talk about, and then it's just the license plate readers. Actually, before I do that, yeah, maybe we'll talk about license plate readers. So I'll talk about license plate readers, and then one more thing, and then I think that'll be it. License plate readers used to be like a novel thing that were kind of only used by police departments, and now they're kind of everywhere. Like homeowner associations have them, and repo men have them, and women. Women can also repo,
and dinosaurs,
and non-binary
actually.
people can also be
Yes.
repo persons.
and non-binary dinosaurs.
Yeah. So like people who work at repossession businesses have license plate reader technology. Malls have them, right? Like we're seeing license plate readers basically everywhere. Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, it's a really good question.
And so what's happening is that like these basically there are like both fixed and mobile license plate readers. So like they'll be on cop cars, and they'll be like sort of at the highway or whatever, at the on ramp for the highway. And then they just like scan like millions and millions of license plates. Then they timestamp that, geocode it, right? They'll add GPS coordinates, and then they like log it. And then what police will do is they'll say like, I found this blue Acura with this license plate number. I want to find it. And then what they'll do is they'll create sort of, oh sorry, hitting my dino friend. Then they'll create like basically go back in time and see like, where have I seen this car before, what neighborhoods, where's it parked, stuff like that. They also can set like hot lists so that there will be like alerts like the next time GPS or a camera reads it. And then they can also like share these alerts with outside police agencies. So you can set it up so like, I mean, I've seen this where like Erie, like in like Erie, New York, they're getting alerts about stolen cars detected in Chicago that they think, got boosted in New York and then transported to Chicago. That doesn't mean that the police, if your car gets stolen, that the police are going to do anything about it. Like, that's not what we're talking about here, right? But that is like a thing that we've been seeing, is that they have these like massive databases with GPS timestamps and like license information, GPS coded, and then they'll share that basically nationwide with police departments. They'll subscribe to each other's heat lists, and then they'll send these alerts to each other. So anyway, that's basically what the license plate reader network does, and just to be aware of that. That's exactly how it's being used. The EFF has a great, I can't see my mouse cursor. Where is it? This one. Maybe that. It work? Yeah. The EFF has a really, really good link about how they work. Thank you for posting it, Ale. And yeah, that's kind of how they work. The other thing I'll also say is if you want to get a license plate reader, you like Vigilant Solutions or whoever, Motorola now Motorola, will sell you like a kit, 4,000 or 300 ALPRs for $50,000 a year. But what they'll do is they'll do basically a rebate, and they'll say like, if you want to pay less, make sure we're collecting as much data as possible, and like allow us to sell it and share it as widely as possible.
Yeah.
So
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, you know, this is something we didn't really talk too much about because it's a bit out of scope, but I think it's important to realize that the collection, processing, and reselling of data is really one of the major incentives that the surveillance dragnet has grown so much in the last few years, outside of securitization. So the devices that we've covered now and other ones that we haven't are really just sort of sites for extraction. And in this case, they use data as capital to build other sorts of products, make other sorts of decisions for corporations or for, I guess, like, you know, quote unquote policy development. Yeah. And so I think it's important to sort of think about what our relationship to that data is, and also how we can prevent the flow of data to keep this market, I guess, behaving in the way that it's behaving. Yeah, yeah. I don't know if you want to add more to that.
No, that's really good.
Yeah. And we have some really good questions in the chat too.
Yeah. Yeah, please keep the questions in the chat going. I think we're behind a few, but that's okay.
Mhm.
And I also appreciate the person who commented that they used to be a non-binary Revo person. Okay, so one thing I wanted to pull up is, I think that's all I want to say about ALPRs. There is give me 1 second here. All right, sorry about that. That mute was intentional this time. So someone posted a really good question in the chat about like GPS data and data flows in general.
Mhm.
So one thing to note is that there are essentially companies that whose entire business model is to collect data and sell that data to law enforcement. So companies like LexisNexis are quite known because they'll collect like information about like utilities that you have. They'll buy information from ad companies and stuff like that. And then what they'll do is they'll like put together dossiers. And so like when the police want to like raid a suspected stash house or whatever, execute a search warrant or seize property, they'll go to these data brokers and they'll say like, where is this person living? What do they have? Blah 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 blah. And so there's these like really like there are these companies that collect all this massive information and then sell it. So what's been happening with this information and particularly with GPS data is that police have been buying this stuff from data brokers because it's easier than having to get like a warrant or go to a cell phone company. So I wrote this article for Project on Government Oversight when I was there maybe two years ago, and really talked about this problem. Here's one company that's called Fog Data Science. What Fog Data Science does is just leave the picture up. So what Fog Data Science does is like basically like deliver ads to your cell phone. And what they were doing is taking like the ad information and then bundling that ad information with your GPS data and then selling that. So what you could do is you could say like, I want to know every person that's been staying in this house for the last month, and then fog data science would go and reveal like, okay, here are all the cell phones that we think exist and who we think they are, and here's where they have traveled in the past. And so I've read documents where like the police were like, oh, this isn't a suspect, it's the babysitter, because I was able to figure out they went three doors down, and they were actually the babysitter on the night of the murder. Like really dystopian kind of stuff, right? And so like the use of GPS data is like really like a thing that worries me, and there's a lot of like companies that are in this game. So what does that mean for protests and protest activities? I mean, I think a couple of things. Like number one is airplane mode is your friend, or turn your phone off. Number two, like I think when I think about like how I want people to, what I think is good things for us to be thinking about as we go to protests is like, just think about how we would approach it if we were back in the 90s. I mean, I guess some people weren't even born.
Well, I totally was. I'm from the Jurassic.
Yeah, you're from the Jurassic era. Yeah, you're a little bit older than me.
Yeah,
You're
right.
from the.
We didn't have phones to worry about back
then. But like like do you have a physical map, or do you have like on Google Maps you can do like the offline map and download? You can download like a city area in Google Maps for offline mode, but that doesn't work with GPS, as I found out in foreign countries. So like maybe you need like a physical map, or you need to say like, hey, if we get separated, like let's meet up at Soju Barbecue at 4 p.m. On Ashland and Ogden. Yeah. So like so GPS is not your friend in many ways. And so we should just like be thinking about practical ways to not have to rely on it.
Yeah.
So my 2 or 3 tips is like, bring a physical map, use Google's offline maps if you can, and turn off your Wi-Fi and turn on airplane mode. That's what I do.
Yeah, I think if you're maybe a little more, if you have a little bit more in terms of technical skills, it could be worthwhile to just have a phone that you've compartmentalized only for doing actions. But that'll unfortunately be a little bit out of scope for this conversation. I think we have a few a lot of really great questions. Maybe we can actually start with this one since it's most relevant to what we just talked about. Are they, I think in this case, when we're talking
like
about
fog reveal,
yeah, the normal data brokers like People Search, True Finders, etc., or are they contractors and private companies?
So like it's usually I mean, it's everyone. Like the data brokers are one thing that we've seen is that there are data brokers that both buy and delete data. So like we've seen news articles where like people will say like, pay me $5 a month and I can get your information deleted off the internet. And they're also like running at like data broker websites like People Search. Then like, so there's like the smaller, I guess, data broker websites like People Search and stuff like that, which is kind of a very muddy like I don't know who to trust in that situation. The bigger data brokers typically get their data from like everyone. Like I think LexisNexis has, I'm remembering off the top of my head, so don't quote me as a specific, but I think I once saw that they had claimed that they were ingesting 1 billion data sources for their databases. And then there's also like, yeah, so the bigger the company, the more like data sources they have. And then there are other ones who are like kind of like fog data science, who are just kind of like super specialized in the type of data collection that they're doing. I will also say that places like LexisNexis do everything, right? So they do sell location data, they do collect, and then there's also like restrictions that they try to place on who can access what kind of data. So like if you're law enforcement, you can access way more data than if you are a reporter, for example. And so it's just like it's such a mess. It's pretty fucked. Um, Consumer Reports did a pretty decent review of like data brokers deletion tools recently. Ali, can you
Yeah, I'll get that.
drop that in the chat? And so yeah, so it's just like it's just like such a mix that it's really hard to give a good exact answer. But yeah, I hope that answers your question. But happy to take more questions from the chat.
There was another question. Sorry, let me just pull it up. Oh, where was it? Here we go. Earlier in the stack, do the old school anti-CCTV washout strategies like using really bright infrared LEDs on your hat still work these days? Do you have any idea?
Not really.
Yeah.
No, not really. And in fact, most cameras will sell like kind of on the camera itself, like you know, LED anti-LED filtering or something like that. So yeah, it's a good question. They used to work, but not anymore. Someone asked, how are the big internet companies just outright selling your location data to the police, like Google location history? At least not the big ones. They have police have they don't need to sell them because they can just hand it over. So like they have like dedicated like web portals where they'll like say like I need this for, I can send the subpoena and I can send the warrant, and like they'll turn it all over within like a day. So they don't need to sell it because the police can get it anyway.
Mm-hmm. We got a question about data poisoning. Another question for the stack. How do you all feel about the efficacy of muddying the waters of your data trail, i.e. sending cell phones along with friends on camping trips, extensions which spam random search questions, apps or devices that generate fake GPS reports, and so forth? I mean, I think it's a very interesting topic and idea. I don't know how much I've seen it used by large groups of people. I don't know, Freddie, if you have any ideas around it.
Well.
I'm just pro mischief. I'm pro creating bad data, but that's not a good enough answer for this question.
No, I mean, I think this one and the question after it is, a ton of people are using Signal during these actions out of necessity, which means airplane mode would not work. I think I think the way to think about it is like the data poisoning stuff and like the Signal chat. Like if I think I need Signal to be chatting with someone at a demo, then probably I'm okay with just having to have my GPS location on. And those are different considerations, like than if I thought there was a risk of arrest or whatever it was. Like if I thought there was a risk of arrest, I would leave my phone turned off or at home. And so it really is just more about like how do you want to operate, or what are your considerations on the day of? And that's just like basic planning, like you're having that discussion with your friends that you're going with, like if I was at a protest some years ago, and I was with someone who was wasn't undocumented, but not a card holder, and stuff got kind of hairy, and I was like, yeah, it's time for us to go. And it's that kind of stuff, right? So I don't really like try to like worry about sending my data trail off somewhere else, because like I just kind of make when it's time to go, and so I knew who I was with, and just kind of trying to keep a good sense of what's going to work for us and what's not. So that's that's kind of how I deal about it. Signal with very short disappearing messages is okay. Yeah, I mean I do that too quite often. So exactly. And it works fairly well. Yeah. Other questions from the stack? Let me go back. I just want to make sure I'm not forgetting anything.
Yeah.
I
don't think we have other questions.
Okay.
But
nope. There we go. This one. Anything else I want to talk about before? I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about that. Okay. I think those were the big ones that we wanted to talk about today. A couple of other things. Not major. Wait, Ale, are you looking for some more links to drop in the chat?
Yeah.
Okay. While Ale does that, yeah, the Chicago Police Surveillance website. It's our go-to place for everything. It has everything that I think is not worth. If it's super important, we put it on this website. And there's stuff that y'all ask questions about, like the GPS information that we haven't put on here, mostly because we've seen it in other parts of the country, but not so much in Chicago. But it's probably worth adding in here. So those questions were really good. Everything that we think is relevant to the Chicago context should be on the Chicago Police Surveillance website. We are updating it this summer. Yeah. So we'll let folks know when it does get updated. You go on our website, lucyparsonslabs.com. Is that right? Nope. Can't even type it. There you go. If you go to our website, you can. Where is it? Here it is. Stay in touch. Yeah, thank you. The Warren Canaries from July. Are we okay? Yeah, that's when we rolled out our new website, and so we haven't updated it since then. But that's why.
Yeah. It'll be updated soon.
Thank you for posting the link in the chat. So if you go to our Stay in Touch, it will you can get added to our email list, and a couple of other things that are kind of relevant. We don't post on X as much because it's kind of a fascist hellscape. We do have a Blue Sky that we post on. We try to post TikToks about whatever surveillance news is happening in the day. So if you're on TikTok, and feel free to follow us on there. Instagram, Ale is always posting on our Instagram. That's a good place to follow us. Yeah. And what's the dinosaur skincare routine?
Ha! It's a lot of retinol. What can I say?
Wait.
We got retinol before bed. We have to wear sunscreen. What can I say? It's we're losing the ozone layer faster and faster, so you need more and more of it.
Well, the ozone layer got destroyed because of the meteorite that
it's true
landed in the Yucatan. I don't know that retinol would have done anything about that.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
What can I say? Where are my feathers? Oh, we don't talk about that. It's a sore spot.
It's a sore spot.
Don't worry about it.
When they get stressed out, the feathers come off. It's like when I get my eczema outbreaks. Cool. I think that's what we have for now. we're gonna go take a break and have some dinner. Oh, the other thing, contacting us on Signal.
Mhm.
Feel free to shoot us a message on Signal. I'm gonna post my Signal number in the chat. Um, people email us all the time. Signal's a faster way to get to us if you have follow-up questions or just want to talk. Yeah, I guess the one thing that I will leave you on with is that like a lot of the surveillance stuff is feels like it's there to intimidate, and we hope that it doesn't intimidate y'all. That this like knowledge is power, to
Mhm.
be cliche. But
Yeah.
uh
I also think when it comes to practical efforts towards resisting some of these tools, especially in light of the DNC, it's a lot more low tech than I think people give it credit for. You know, cover your face. Signal, if you take pictures for whatever reason, I mean, I generally recommend don't. But if you do, Signal strips out a lot of the metadata if you run it through there, and it also has a blur tool built in if
Yeah.
faces get caught. Plan with your group of friends in advance in case you get separated. Yeah.
Comfortable shoes and bring water.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget to bring water.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks everyone. I really appreciate us hanging out and just chatting. And see you on the streets.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do a little
Like and
outro.
subscribe.
Like and don't forget to
Yeah, hit that bell notification.
hit the $5 donut. Yeah. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Let me play some music. Outro music.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Nice one.
Beautiful.